All right. Happy Friday, everybody. This is the 56th Automation Hour. And if you're joining us for the first time, all lines are muted, and we ask you to please post your questions on the Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community, and we should be putting a link out to the chat shortly, if that's not already out there. We're going to take questions throughout the session based on Shannon's presentation or any general process automation questions that you might have. So in addition to the Trailblazer Community Salesforce Automation Hour, we also have a website, automationhour.com, where you could access our previous webinars as well as sign up for upcoming ones. And in regards to upcoming ones, we've scheduled out until May, so go out on the website and register for those. If you can't attend in person, you will get the link to the recording and the deck after the fact, and we post it out on our YouTube channel as well. We will be continually booking for the rest of 2019, so if you do have a business use case and a cool process automation solution for that, please DM us and we'll get you on the list for future sessions. And we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Concrete.io, for sponsoring this free webinar series. And here are your co-hosts, David Litton, Rakesh, and myself. And with that, because we have some really awesome content for Shannon to share with us, we're very excited to have her on Automation Hour, and very excited to see the new Flow Builder, which is coming out in spring 19. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Shannon. So there you go, Shannon. You should have control.
Okay, give me just a second to get myself into slideshow mode, and you see my screen?
Yep.
Alrighty. So I'm Shannon Hale. I am Senior Director of Product Management at Salesforce.com on the Process Automation team. I am working currently on Flow Builder and Process Automation. Process Builder are my tools. Some of you may know me previously from an earlier time at Salesforce when I was the product manager for declarative apps. I was on setup and platform actions and schema builder, formula engine, and a bunch of other tools. So I've been around the platform for a little while, and you can always follow me on Twitter at Shannon Sands. So today we're going to talk about Flow Builder, but before that, of course, I have to ask you all to review our forward-looking statement. If you haven't already memorized this, this basically states that I may be making, in fact, will be making some forward-looking statements towards functionality that will be coming out later on. It's not necessarily available in the product yet. We ask you to make any purchasing or an investment decisions based on currently existing functionality and not on any future-looking statements that I might make. And you can review the full deck on the Salesforce.com website. So given that this is Automation Hour, I'm going to assume that a lot of you are probably already kind of familiar with the subject that I'm going to talk about today. But just in case you're not, Lightning Flow is the Salesforce declarative tools that help you automate business processes. And it includes a couple of different tools. One is Process Builder, and the other one, up until winter 19, has been Cloud Flow Designer and Flow. And it lets you string together screens and actions and other elements to model really complex business processes. So for example, you might want a step-by-step wizard to guide an agent through some kind of call agent process, or maybe you want to automatically create a renewal opportunity when original opportunity is closed. All of these things are things that you can build out declaratively. And up until winter 19, the tool that you would have used to do that would have been the Cloud Flow Designer, which was a lovely functional tool. You can see it here on the screen. It It had all of the elements that allowed you to create the logical tools, but it was a little bit slow, and it ran in Flash, and Flash is soon to be no more. And so we had to build a new tool, and while we were doing that, we thought we would make a bunch of improvements while we were at it. So the new tool that we have is called Flow Builder, and it will be out in spring 19. Obviously, forward-looking statement, but it's already out in pre-release. I don't anticipate that there's any reason why it won't be out in spring 19. So you'll probably see it starting to come to your orgs around the end of January. And I think the best way to really talk about Flow Builder is to just jump right in and do a demo. Apparently, I lost my browser. One thing I did want to call out is if you aren't familiar with the Salesforce automation tools, a really good place to get started with that is automate your business processes with Lightning Flow. And if you wait until are on Trailhead, and if you wait until early February, this will all be, any Cloud Flow Designer content will be replaced with Flow Builder content. So you'll have all the newest, latest, and greatest stuff that you'll see. So the way we build a flow now is we can go to Flows under Process Automation in the Setup tree. And what I want to build right now is sort of a new screen flow for a support agent. We'll suppose that the flow will have a screen where the agent can enter a contact's first and last name, will query Salesforce for the contact information and get their email and phone number and display those back to the agent. And then the agent can modify the email address or the phone number and save the changes back to the database. And so starting from flows, by default in Spring 19, you won't actually see the new flow in Cloud Flow Designer button because we've turned it off by default. But you can enable it if you need to under the process automation settings in Setup. So one thing you might notice if you are a Cloud Flow Designer user is that it loads much faster now. And if you've used other tools like Process Builder or Lightning App Builder, the interface is probably going to feel a lot more familiar to it. We've made it a lot easier to find your way around flows. The elements are a lot more distinctive, as you'll see when we start to drag them on the canvas. The text is a lot more readable. The shapes are more intuitive, and we've streamlined the toolbox a bit, so it's easy to find the element or the resource you're looking for. And we'll talk through those as we build out the flow. I'm going to focus largely on the differences between Cloud Flow Designer and Flow Builder during this presentation, but if you haven't really used Cloud Flow Designer, you can just sort of space out over those parts and worry about the stuff that I'm actually doing now. So we're going to add a screen. And the first thing you're going to notice is that the screen builder now works a lot more like Lightning App Builder. Your palettes of components are on the left, and when you drag new elements onto the canvas, their properties appear on the right. So we're going to start off with get contact name as our label. The API name gets built automatically. Many of the controls that were in Cloud Flow Designer are also here. We have options around our control navigation, whether or not we want to display the header, which has the label in it, the footer with the buttons. If we don't display the buttons, we can still access them through an API. We have the option for help text. We're just going to leave it for that. On the left-hand side with our components, we have a number more input components than you might recall from Cloud Flow Designer, including some brand new ones. In Spring 19, there's now an address component. And we also have the ability to put a display image in the page if we had an image. And let's just start off with a little bit of display text that says, may I ask for your first and last name, please, because we're very polite. And apparently it does not like the question mark. Oh, or I'm just silly and I forgot to add the API name first and put the question in the API name. That's how you can tell it's a live demo, folks. Oops. And the second thing we're going to ask, we actually do have a name element or a name component, but I am going to actually just go ahead with the straight up text box, and I will tell you why in a minute. So we're going to have a first name, and we're going to have last name, and we're done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to link our screen to the start node. Now in Cloudflow Designer, you would just click a little button on the element itself to indicate which one was the start node. But in this case, we found that it was sometimes hard to see that little green icon on the element, so we've started with a much more explicit start button, and we're actually just going to drag the connector over and start that. So now that we have the information from the screen, we're going to get the contact records from Salesforce. And this one's a pretty big difference if you're used to Cloudflow Designer. In Cloudflow Designer, we had two different elements to query records. We had record lookup and fast lookup. And people had a really difficult time remembering when they were supposed to use one versus the other. And we had the same thing for records. We had record create and fast create, record update and fast update, record delete and fast update, or fast delete. So we've basically gone and gotten rid of that differentiation between the fast and the regular record, and we just call it get records. And when we get on to get records, we will then have, whoops, let's put spaces in that so it's a little bit more readable. We then give you a number of options, and the options that you choose are the ones which determine whether or not you're going to use a fast lookup or a regular lookup. It all happens behind the scenes now. So we are going to get a contact record. And we are going to filter our contact records. So we're going to say conditions are met, and we're going to filter them on the first name equaling the first name from our screen component. And we're going to get the last name equals the last name from our screen component. Now, in a perfect world, well, in reality, let's face it, lots of people have the same first and last name. In our case, we're just going to pretend that we only have one first and last name just for the sake of keeping the demo short. So we're just going to get the first demo. We have the option of whether to store the field values together in a record variable or in separate variables. You might remember this was one of those things that differentiated between the fast and regular lookup. We're going to store them in a record variable, and when no records are returned, we will set it to null. We're going to create a new variable to store the contact because we don't have one yet. So we'll create a new resource. And this again is where you'll notice that there's a little bit of a difference from the Cloudflow Designer. We used to talk about S-object variables and collection variables. And in this case, we now have lumped all of those together under record. So we have a number of similar variable types or data types that we had before, but S-object is now record. And then when you create your variable, you indicate whether or not you're making it a collection or not. So we're just going to say allow multiple values. Oops, except we're not going to say that because we're going to only retrieve one. We're going to get the contact object. And these are the privacy, the input and output type dropdown that you used to have in Cloudflow Designer, which indicated whether it was the data would only be used within the flow or could be used externally. Perhaps if you were passing in URLs or variables through the URL. In this case, we're keeping our flow very self-contained, so we don't actually have any availability outside the flow. Now, one thing which I know several people have pointed out in demos, the new resource is not actually selected automatically. I promise it's on my list. We'll probably have that fixed we'll have that fixed in summer. We can choose which contact fields we want to store in the variable. The ID is stored there automatically. So in our case, we're going to get the first name, the last name, the email, and there's a lot of different options for email, but we'll just do the one, and phone. And then we're done. And now we're just going to string our connect our lines to add that to the flow. So now we have asked for our contact information from the agent. We've gotten the contact information out of the database, and we want to come back and display it back to our agent along with the phone and the email. So this time I am actually going to name this. Oops, confirm email and phone. This time I'm actually going to use the name component. And you'll notice that this is a Lightning component, and it has a number of different options in the sidebar here for the attributes that you can configure. You're going to indicate which fields to display in a comma-separated list here, and then you have options for the first name, the informal name. You can choose whether you want to display all of these fields in the component. We only need the first and last name here. And for our last name, we're going to use here's my variable. There it is, contact. Last name. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy that because I'm going to also put it in the output variables for the last name. And for the first name, we're going to use contact first name. So in addition to, by adding it to the output variables, in addition to actually displaying it, will allow the agent to actually change the name as well as the phone number and the email address if we need to. The label is fine, it's just the name. We're going to add an email and phone. So for phone, we have an option of actually indicating that we want to use a specific pattern. We can enter placeholder text. For our value, we are going to enter the contact phone. Oops. And we are also going to store that so that we can later save it. And likewise, for the email address, we're going to get the email address from our contact. And we're going to copy it and we're going to save it as our output value. So now we're getting the information, we're querying it, we're allowing the agent to update it, and our very last step here is to update the records. So again, we used to have fast update and regular update, and now we just have one. Update contacts. We're going to use the IDs and field values from a record variable. Since we have the record variable, we're going to use the contact variable, and that's all there is to it. And if I were being a really good admin, I would have added a description so I would know what I was doing later. So that's basically our flow, and now it might be fun for us to have a test. And so we're going to save it. And we have a number of different options for the type of flow. In this case, it's a screen flow. And we'll save. So it's giving me a couple of warnings. These aren't necessarily going to prevent me from saving or activating the flow. They're just a heads up. And the big one is that the screen includes screen components that require the Lightning runtime, and that's the phone and the email components because they were Lightning components. So I'm fine with that. We're going to run them in the Lightning runtime. That's all good. And let's just run it in debug mode. If you haven't seen debug mode, it could be a really great way to sort of verify that everything is going the way you think. I'm going to go ahead and run it. And the contact template that we have that we're going to use as the demo is for Lauren Boyle. Next. And you can see on the right-hand side here, it's showing me what it's gone off to do. It's done a fast lookup, so it knew that we wanted a fast lookup. First name is Lauren, last name is Boyle, found a record, here's the record, here's all the information. And suppose that I've decided that, oh, it turns out that Lauren's phone number is actually 3517. So we'll change that and we'll say next. And we can see here that when we've saved it, the variable values that we're saving, the phone number is saved to 5317. And if we went and looked at it in the contact record, we would discover that we had changed it. Oops. So Flow Builder is generally available in Spring 19. It will be available in Lightning Experience and Salesforce Classic. Your existing flows and their behavior and their runtime experience won't change at all. And flows from Cloud Flow Designer won't change either. You don't have to do anything special to migrate them from Cloud Flow Designer to Flow Builder. They'll just automatically open in Flow Builder. Now, one thing that you do want to be aware of is when you open a Cloud Flow Designer flow version in Flow Builder the first time or until you've actually saved it, the save button's disabled, and you're going to want to save that as a new version just so you have the different versions if you need them. By default, we are enabling Flow Builder and turning it on for everybody in Spring 19, and we are disabling Cloud Flow Designer. If you need to in Spring 19, you'll be able to re-enable Cloud Flow Designer and set up. Maybe you need one of the features, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, that's missing. You can enable it in setup under Process Automation Settings by deselecting the Disable Access to Cloud Flow Designer checkbox. But we probably won't allow it to be enabled past, hopefully not past summer. So, or maybe not even in summer, once we finish getting in some of the last bits of functionality. So if you're just starting to use Flow Builder or you're an active user, you're going to want to try switching over as soon as you can. So the next few slides here, I just wanted to quickly reiterate some of the differences. The data elements, if you used record lookups or fast lookups, you now use get records. Similarly for create, update, and delete, you use create records, update records, delete records. For resources, the equivalent of an S-object data type is now record. We've also changed dynamic record choice to record choice set and pick list choice to pick list choice set. Same functionality, different label. Variables, if you have an S-object variable, you'll just use a regular variable with the data type set to record. Collection variables are basically the same thing, a variable, but you check that allow multiple values checkbox. For actions, we didn't really go into actions. In Cloud Flow Designer, we displayed all of the actions in the left-hand side, which was a lot, tended to be a little bit overwhelming. So we've cut it down just to the action types. And what will happen is when you actually go into an action, actually we can just flip back over there. When you go into and create an action, say we wanted to send an email after we updated the contact records, we can just search for send email, and so the action types are available right there. So static actions like post to chatter, submit for approval, send email, those are all under core action now. Local action is under core action. Quick action is under core action. Apex is an Apex action. That's if you're using invocable methods. And then the old Apex plugin actions, which are being deprecated, are under Apex Action Legacy. And then finally, the other one that might be noticeable to you is we used to call the element wait, but the button was pause. So now we're actually just calling them all pause so that there's no difference in the label. A couple of other differences from Cloud Flow Designer that you might have noticed. Flow Builder doesn't include a rich text editor in Spring 19. You can edit the text to include HTML tags at this time. And any rich text that you applied in Cloud Flow Designer will also appear as raw HTML. We're working on that one, and we should have the rich text editor in place for summer. Same thing, we don't have buttons right now for undo, redo, or copy paste. Those, again, are things we're working actively on and we'll have in place for summer. Flow system variables, we have moved them under the global variables category. And the other big one is that in Cloud Flow Designer, we had the concept of steps. We don't have that in Flow Builder. The steps that you added in Cloud Flow Designer will still be on the canvas, but you can't convert them to screens. We're not really planning on supporting steps in Flow Builder. The feedback we've had is that people don't use them very much. So if you are using them, we recommend that you convert them to screens. For more information on the differences, once you have flows in your Spring 19 org, there's a little blurb at the top of the flows page that says learn what's different in Flow Builder. And if you follow that link, it'll tell you all of the differences. I can't give you the link right now because the help is not online yet. But once you've got access to Flow Builder in your org, you can go check it out. And I thought I'd just talk about a couple of other things while we're here. The stuff that we're working on. I mentioned that we're working on the rich text editor. I mentioned that we're working on undo, redo, and copy, paste, or duplicate. Some of the other things that we're working on, maybe not for summer, maybe a little later in the year, but definitely on the radar and actively being investigated right now. We're looking at solving conditional field visibility so that you'll be able to hide and show fields based on their field values. We're using that work to also explore richer screen layouts in general. We added the display image component in Spring 19. We're going to provide more control. You may know that you're able in the Lightning runtime to actually put stuff in 2 columns. We're looking at a lot of further improvements around screen layouts. We are looking at support for Lightning Web Components. We're looking at out-of-box components for lookup and also for record. Those are kind of the big ones that are in the works right now. Obviously, that's a forward-looking statement, safe harbor. And you can find more information, Salesforce help. The updates will start going out as Spring 19 starts rolling out to production orgs or sandbox orgs. We're working on all new Trailhead projects and modules, so those will all be updated with Flow Builder content. And we're looking at a new Flow Basics module that actually will walk you through Flow in a more descriptive manner than some of the projects. We have some blog posts planned with some video tutorials that will be coming soon on admin.salesforce.com. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always post them in the Salesforce Workflow Automation group on the Trailblazer community. And with that, do we have any questions?
We have plenty of questions.
I was going to say, this is where you're going to tell me that I wasn't actually displaying my screen and nobody saw it.
So
I'm going
I'm
to
just
hope
gonna,
you jumped in for that one.
so I'm just gonna cover off on questions that haven't yet been answered in the Trailblazer community.
Okay.
Um, so from Mark asks, in the designer, is there a snap to grid type of capability?
There is not right now, and we are looking at a couple of different other modes, but at the moment you may have seen me wiggling my node to get the line straight. Yeah, that's what we've got right now.
Okay. Virginia asks, are there any plans for a tool to help migration of workflows to flows and processes?
That is a good question, and we have definitely talked about it. And I'm going to be honest to say it's one of those challenges that's a little bit hard, and we haven't really figured out a good solution for it yet. But it is something that we talk about. So I can't give you any sort of timeline on it, but you're not the only person who's asked for something like that.
Okay. And Rachel asks, can you talk about the saving again? It sounded like it would be exactly like Process Builder is now, where you need to create a new version in order to edit. Is that correct?
Yes, when you're going from Cloudflow Designer to Flow Builder, the first time you will have to save it as a new version. The rest of the time, and you might have to correct me on this one, I believe the rest of the time is as long as it's not active, you can edit it without saving it as a new version.
Okay. And Matt asks, one of my peeves with Cloudflow Designer is that I don't think you could specify filter logic and or not parens when setting the filter criteria to build a dynamic record choice list. Is that something that is in Flow Builder or could it be in the future?
It is not in Flow Builder right now, but somebody else brought that up to us recently, and we're talking about how to add it.
Okay.
Not just your peeve, Matt.
And another participant asked if there are any plans to have database table element in the screen resources.
Database table element as in a list?
I'm not really sure if
displaying a list of
the person can clarify. That'd be great.
I
Yeah,
think so. Like in the Visual Force page, you can select the object, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're looking at a component for record, and I think list would be another really good component to look at. And of course, at the moment, if you had to, and you had a developer handy, you could create a custom Lightning component and include that. I don't have a timeline for that one, but I think it's a really good idea because I know I've seen a lot of places where we want to display basically a list of records to choose from.
Okay. All right, going to the Trailblazer community, there's a question from Walid. Have a couple questions to Shannon regarding the new Flow Builder. When I create a new variable for output values, for example, I should reselect this created variable instead of it being selected by default. Any way to auto-select this by default after creation? And then number two, any possibility of allowing copy-paste from a flow to another?
So the first question around auto-selecting, yes, we should auto-select it. And we're also talking a little bit about how it's a little annoying if we basically have to also store the output values as well as the input values. So we're looking at automating that in a way. So I think both of those are places where we can definitely make you a little bit more efficient. And then as for the second question, can you remind me of the second question?
Is there the ability to copy and paste
Copy and
from
paste
one
between.
flow to another?
That one we do not have yet. And I don't think we're going to be able to support copying, like if I have flows in two different tabs, copying this element on one tab and then pasting it into another flow. One thing that may help with that we're looking at, that we're starting to roll out in Spring 19 is templates. So you could potentially create a template from one flow and then create a new flow based on that template. And by doing that, you would basically get, so if I was creating a template based on this flow here with the contact name, the get contact information, and so on, I create that as a template, and then next time I create a new flow from that template, I get all those nodes. So that might help. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to paste between different flow records soon.
Okay. And Brooke asks, are there plans to help demystify governor limits in flows? I often hit limits and can't tell exactly where the inefficiencies are.
Just generally, we're looking at ways to demystify a lot of things, and governor limits are always challenging. We're looking at better error messages, which might help with that. More descriptive error handling. And beyond that, it's a little hard to say offhand.
Okay. If folks have additional questions, I think I covered off on all the questions. Rakesh, feel free to jump in if I missed any that haven't yet been answered either in chat or the Trailblazer community.
No, we already covered all the questions in success community. Adam is also answering behind the scenes. So.
Okay, so we'll give folks another minute or so. Make use of Shannon being on to be able to answer. Oh, we have another question. Amit,
yeah, and I'll totally jump in and answer questions in the community, or of course you can always ping me on Twitter.
Okay. Amit had a comment. I think it would be better if we could multi-select the fields at once, at one go, and not have to do it one at a time.
Oh yeah, totally agree with you. That might even work. No, it doesn't. Sorry. But you can, in fact, just click on the link rather than dragging them over. So you could just do them a lot more quickly than I did. We're looking at a lot of this micro interactions like that. So we'll probably see some improvements as summer rolls out.
Okay, we have a question from Mark. I realize it's a little off topic. Could Shannon discuss process builder roadmap, such as add descriptions to each element in process builder, display more information in action elements, and then on the My Process page, doing list views and last modified by?
So it's description. What was the other? Oh, more information about the actions.
Correct. And then on the process page, being able to do list views and show the last modified by.
Yeah, I don't have an actual timeline on those, but I know one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is the list view functionality, not only in Process Builder, but also in flows as we are starting to move that list page to Lightning. Having the same functionality that one has for regular list views would be really awesome thing to have there, and it's definitely something that we've been talking about. And the other two haven't been on my radar, but keep in mind I started a month ago, so I'm still working my way through the backlog.
Okay, and Mark Baseman just noted that they will be planning to do some of these items on admin blog as well, flow-related things with Shannon. And someone asked if there are any plans to support debug with record variable inputs.
So passing in, sorry, just to make sure I understand the question, passing in record variables like saying use the contact record?
If whoever submitted that.
Or use this specific contact, like use Lauren Boyle?
Said yes.
Okay. And I don't have a good answer for that, but if it's on the trail, if you post it in the Trailblazer community, I will get an answer and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Sorry.
And Stewart asks, regarding validation rule errors, what is in store to update users when a flow causes a validation rule error?
That is also a really good question, and I will have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, Stuart, if you could post that out on the Trailblazer community
sorry.
and mention Shannon, that'd be great.
I have to look at it and figure out what it does now.
Okay, Makai asks, sorry if this was asked before, but are there plans to bring copy, paste, undo to the new flow builder?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Probably more in the form of duplicate than copy paste necessarily, but yes, absolutely.
Jeremiah asks, any plans on hoping to better play with duplicates in flow?
Duplicate flows, duplicate records, duplicate.
Jeremiah, if you could just clarify that. Duplicate contacts, duplicate leads, etc.
Oh, more like dupe matching. Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. We haven't talked about it specifically, but I'm making a note. And I will dig deeper.
Okay. Tamar asks, is there a plan to enable using record collection as an input in a record choice set element in Flow Builder?
Record collection as an input.
Record collection as an input.
I do not know, and I will have to look at that one.
Okay, so that's out on the Trailblazer community. Right. Michael asks, anything on the roadmap for supporting annotations on Flow? This would be really helpful for large, complicated flows.
Annotations beyond just descriptions on the elements, which probably not everything has a description. Yeah. Or more like annotations, like a note or a comment kind of thing.
We'll need Michael to further elaborate on his question.
That'd be a really neat idea. I can see like being able to like select a group of things and like stick a note on the canvas. I don't have anything on the roadmap for that, but you've started wheels turning, which is always a dangerous thing.
And Shalom asks, will the assignment of multi-select pick list values to a collection variable be supported in Flow Builder? Apologies if re-asked.
Is that one on the Trailblazer community as well?
It is. It's currently in the chats only. I don't think I've seen it in the Trailblazer community.
If we can, that's another one I'll have to look at.
Just sorry to interrupt, but I have one flow created, you can install and then convert multi-select pick list to a collection variable. I will post the URL.
Okay. All right, and Michael came back and said regarding the annotation question, it's a note on the flow diagram that would appear on the flow.
Okay. Yeah. As I said, I think that would be a really helpful way to manage some of the more complex flows. I don't have any, it's not on the roadmap right now, but I'm definitely, as I said, I wrote it down and I'm starting to noodle on it already. That doesn't mean anything that is going to happen like in the short term, but just so we're clear, that I'm definitely thinking about how we could do that with some of the other improvements that we have planned for the canvas. So.
The next one's a good one from Marina. Along the lines of notes annotations, would it be feasible to print flows with detail so that you could see, for instance, all element descriptions at a glance?
Potentially, yes. It's definitely not something I've been thinking about, but I can think of ways in which we could do that.
So Marina, that would be a good one to just post out on the Trailblazer.
Yeah, I would love to know how you think that would look, because I think the challenge for me is like, flows more often look like, oops, not going to open. Flows more often end up looking like this than sort of nice orderly things, and figuring out where we would display the extra information. I could see ways to print it off in like a list, like spreadsheet like, but then it's hard to sort of show how things are connected to each other. So I have to think about that one.
All right, another question. Any plans to select a default value in the pick list choice set? Currently, a default pick list value is only available with choices and not pick list choice sets from objects.
Yeah, we were just talking about that one too. Definitely something we're talking about, and I don't have any sort of timeline on it, but we were talking quite a bit about pick lists and choices and default values in general.
And someone threw out a suggestion of any easier way to compare two flow versions from the UI.
We've been talking about a metadata diff tool, but I don't know if we have one that's sort of easy to compare from the UI level.
Okay, and Kim asks, any plans to allow the comparison of two collection variables within a flow?
In like an expression, like collection variable A equals collection variable B, or in a way where you actually want to see what's in the collection?
Kim, if you could clarify that.
Yeah. Design
Yes.
time? Okay.
Yes, these records are in both.
Oh, so more like these are.
Or in one or the other.
Set comparison. Yeah. Any plans? Not at the moment, but I'm definitely writing it down. I have like a whole page here of stuff I'm writing down. Anyone who knows me from before would know that half the time my answer to a question would be, it's on my list. I'm a big fan of lists. I have a whole book of them.
Great. Leanne asks, will flows be available offline using the FL I can't read. Mobile app. Looking forward to new versions of flows.
I will have to check with Jason Teller on that one.
Okay. And Michelle asks, are there any plans to pull in current record values more easily as default pick list choices and have the ability to restrict pick list values and flows by record type?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't have an answer for that for you right now. But yeah, definitely. As I said, default values are something that we're thinking a lot about, and pick lists and default values have always been challenging. So we'll have to look at that.
Rakesh, did I miss any that are out there on the Trailblazer community? I'm refreshing and trying to find new
No,
ones.
no. I'm also one just
Trying to
came
keep
in.
track.
One just came in.
Okay. Is there any functionality to support comments? Perhaps a comment element?
Yeah, I think that's probably goes back to the annotations, being able to sort of add comments on the canvas. We don't have anything for that right now, but I definitely think something we could look at.
Okay. And then Brooke asks, are there plans to import files that the flow can then iterate over? For example, a list of contacts where flow searches for duplicates.
Well, I'm actually glad you asked me that, because Alex just wrote a bunch of quip actions that made it possible. So flow actions that basically go and retrieve a quip document and then iterate like through content in the document. I will find the link to where he's posted those and add it to the to the question in the Trailblazer community.
Okay. All right. Any more questions?
No.
All right, last call, folks.
Someone posted now.
All right, will pick lists behave the same as in desktop using none?
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Stuart, if you could elaborate on that, that'd be great. And while we wait for Stuart, Eric asks, will the input format change when switching between cozy and comfy views?
At the moment, no. Because the flow runtime is not actually the same as the is not actually the same as the SLDS components. We are working on bringing those closer into alignment, but at the moment, those settings wouldn't have any impact.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Okay, any more? Okay, Stewart came back and clarified on his pick list behave the same as in desktop using none. Currently, the first available value is selected automatically on pick list. None needs to be added as a static choice.
Right. I'll have to look at that one and get back to you, Stuart.
Okay. And are there any plans for parallel actions inside the flow, i.e. connecting multiple nodes to another node?
Not at the moment. I don't believe. I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, if you could post that out on the Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community and that mentioned Shannon, she could respond.
Yeah, Definitely.
that.
There's a couple here that I'll have to go and check in with folks on my team to get the answers. Sorry.
Okay, Rakesh, anything else that has come in that I may have missed?
No.
No.
Yeah,
Michelle,
one
for
more
having
came
me.
up. There is one more.
Michelle posted a huge thank you to Shannon for doing this automation hour and answering all our questions. The Filohana is certainly excited for this new tool to go live.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. We're pretty excited about it too. And thanks a lot to Jen and Rakesh and David for having me.
And we will have you again and again and again, Shannon, whenever you want to come back.
All right, I'll keep that in mind.
All right, so with
So next release then.
yeah, you can come back like every release. we'll fit you in a slot. All right,
Okay.
so with that, I do not see any other additional questions, but feel free to continue to post to the Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community at mention Shannon, and I'm sure she'll be happy to respond to your questions. And Shannon, again, thank you so much for coming on here and showcasing the new Flow Builder, and we're all going to look forward to seeing that in our sandboxes and production in spring 19. So with that, we will close out on today's session, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.